Get the water for you.
Very organised.
Yep.
Well done, Tom.
There's 2 glasses there.
Spares are good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom. Good evening.
Good evening. Is this working? Hi. So a really, really warm welcome to you all, hopefully not too warm. It's great to see you here. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce this evening's speakers, Gilbert and George and Charlie Porter. So Gilbert and George don't need much introduction. They've known each other since 1967 when they met as students in London. And then they embarked on an extraordinary journey, a journey of moral and visual adventures. They liken that to the journey of the Pilgrim's Progress. As we speak, there are 3 solo shows of their works in 3 major cities. In Paris, the New Normal pictures, a beautiful example we see here. In Berlin, the Paradisical pictures, and in Frankfurt, the Great Exhibition. And I think that may well be the last leg of an amazing tour that started in Reykjavik, Zurich, Stockholm, Oslo, and Arles. Charlie Porter is a writer, a critic, and a curator. And his new book, What Artists Wear, is a must-read for all of us who take our art and our clothes seriously. I'm going to embarrass you from a little review I just read about it. So a recent review says of Charlie's book, a liberation and a joy, beautifully written and beautifully thought. What Artists Wear is at once a revelatory account of how art is made and an electrifying investigation into the relationship between clothes and autonomy, between freedom and power. That's pretty good. Okay, so without any further ado, over to Gilbert and George and Charlie. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for being here. So we're going to talk for like 45 minutes or so, and then we'll take any questions, but also if in the middle of us talking you feel any burning need to talk, then please do just talk. We're sat in front of one of the New Normal pictures, so I thought I'd start here. And can you talk about this series of pictures and how it started, how it came about?
I think it's very simple. We wanted to have a translation into English of existentialism. And we realized that the nearest, however far away it would be normal. Because we always said we don't want to be normal, because everybody out there is normal. And we don't want to be weird, because all of the artists are weird and strangely dressed. So to be weird and normal at the same time is very good. So translating from the existentialists, we thought new normal would be very good.
I mean, the images, these pictures, we started, I think, probably 2 years ago to take the images. No? And the images was quite interesting because for the first time, for a long time, we started to take them instead of in the studio, we took them all outside.
Right.
And it was the journey that we always did, the walking journey that we call it, no? Like towards the end. No?
Right.
We are nearly there, but anyway. And so instead of looking up in the skies, no, we started to look down, no? And we started to see something completely different. Yeah. And that the new normal pictures came after that. This version of what you call, like even the doors, the gates, the bags for drugs and all the stuff, then everything else, what is there. It was an extraordinary invention, and that for us is life. Our art is based on our vision of life. Ourselves, we are the artists, we are the sculpture, and we are walking through life. And that is our art, our vision of the world for us.
And we're not trying to show that life or reflect that life. We want to use that experience to form our tomorrows. We want the future to be different because of the pictures we create. Our world is a very different world from when we were baby artists. It's in 1967. London is a different world. England is the world is different from then. And it has changed because of creative thought, because of culture. It's generally not because of the government, it's not because of the police station, it's not because of the vicar, it's because of people thinking and feeling and writing poems and singing music and having paintings and sculptures and theatre and ballet and opera. And the creative world, the world of culture, is the main driving force of the great freedom and privilege we live by, the Western world, where we are safe and free. And that's because of culture. We are all partly what music our parents did or did not listen or dance to. We're all part of Shakespeare. We're all part of all the writers that paved the way for our privileged modern life. And we want to add to that, to go forward, safe and free.
I love how you say that it was simple about existentialism. It's a...
Sorry?
That you said at the beginning, it's a simple series about existentialism.
Yes, I mean, we use that word many, many times because we feel in some way we are the outsider who walks the streets of London. No?
Yeah.
And our art is always the outsider, no? The tramp in some way. We like the tramp, no? Yeah. And we feel we are the tramps. They're super tramps these days, but we are the tramps. And that's what we have never been moving away from that feeling, the feeling that we don't want to be part of anything. We don't want to be part of art, and we don't want to be part of movement. We want to be ourselves in the world, and that is the living sculpture.
Right. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but these are the first images for 20 years where your faces and your bodies aren't distorted or masked. Like
I don't think that. I think we did it comes and goes.
But recently there's been the distortion of the face or the
some.
Like that.
We wouldn't see it like that.
We don't see it. I mean, the distortion was when we became very excited for a while. That must have been 10 or 15 years ago. Yeah. But not the last pictures that we did. Like I don't think like the paradisical pictures are not distorted. These ones are not distorted.
The Jack Freak pictures.
The Jack Freak ones are. Yeah. And the hooligan pictures maybe.
Right. Yeah.
It comes and goes on what you call how we want to, because I realized even when we did the Jack Freak, not the Jack Freak ones, the scapegoating pictures. Now when we look at it, we all have masks. Yeah. And the virus was not even there at that time. Well, we already have the mask on.
Right.
And that's extraordinary.
Yeah. Recently, a lot of journalists said, why didn't you do something about coronavirus? Why didn't you do masks? I said, we did that 3 years before the virus.
Right, yeah. Because the beards are almost masks as well.
No, the previous one, the beard ones are something different again. Because with the beard pictures, very, very interesting, because we started to see on the television all this, what you call, in Yugoslavia, all these people behind the gate, behind the fence, and the beard sticking out of the fence. And they were quite extraordinary. Remember when they all tried to move to Europe from Turkey or from Iraq, I think it was. And that's where it came about, the beards through the fences.
Yeah. And also the word new, you've used the word new before.
We always use new.
Tell me about the word new.
Every time we do a new group of pictures, we call them the new pictures, the new Jack Freak ones, the new more normal, the new, what you call, testamental pictures, the new, they are new. No?
Right.
They are not old.
We're always excited and proud when we realize we've done some pictures that we didn't think we would do.
Right.
When we go to the studio, we don't go with ideas or plans. We go completely empty-headed, completely zonked, blind and deaf, and how we are at that time, that day or that month or that year, how we are inside, how we hope, how we fear, how we love, how we dread, all of the thoughts and feelings that lie inside of us and everybody else, we try to let those come out of ourselves into the pictures.
Yes.
To make the pictures out from inside, from our inner feelings, from the head, the soul, and the sex, the three great driving forces that everyone has, so that people, to get the best out of our pictures, have to use those three life forces. They have to see the pictures through their life. If a person looks at one of our pictures and says, it doesn't say anything to me, that is a reflection of the person as well as the picture.
I mean, very interesting, because what we are doing is we are opening the door of 12 Fournier Street, and there it is. Life is in front of us, and that's what we like. You know? Everything that we feel in the moment that we open the door is part of our art, and part of our is not exactly what you see, but what we feel inside. That's very important. The combination of visuals and inner feelings, how we feel about life, how we feel this journey is going, the living sculpture feelings.
Yeah. And all the images that you used in the picture in the series, they were all taken before the pandemic, were they, or were they some?
Yes.
Yeah.
We always take up our own picture. Nobody ever pressed that button except us.
Right.
That's very important to us, because it is our feelings, our thing. Everything, even I think it's quite interesting, because we invented the idea to make pictures. We started in 1971, that we started to move away from making artistic art like drawings and all the stuff, and creating an art that was more like, we call it more propaganda, what do you call it, more aggressive and more direct. And the negative was it for us. And then we invented this language, how to make bigger pictures, no? Because we didn't know how to do that. So we invented that with what you call, we could do it in panels now, we could make 100 meters long if we want. But it's our language and the layers. They're all layers, no? It's never one image, except some pictures that we did in 1980. But normally there are layers of subjects, combinations.
Yeah.
We had to find our own way to make, we felt we had something different to say, so we had to find a different way of saying it. We had to invent our own. We were not trained as picture makers, so as sculptors we didn't have the idea of colour. Like children or amateurs, they all have the box of colours or the box of paints. So it took us 4 years to find red, another 2 years to find yellow, and then later on we could use any colour. So they're not pictures by picture makers, they're pictures by sculptors. The whole idea is a sculpture in general.
And so talking this grid, the earliest pictures were scattered, right? That they were individual images scattered, and slowly they came together.
Yes.
As a
Scattered ones in 1971. Then we did what were they called? The drinking ones. The drinking pictures. They were all scattered into subjects like cross and all the stuff. In 1974, we tried to push it together. First, the cherry blossom pieces, and they still had a gap there. But in 1975, we pushed it together, and after that, that was it.
Right.
We never changed after that. We found our our frame, what we call it. Yes. We never like to. We only like to the totality of the picture. I mean, we are not interested in the framing. That only because of the material that we use, we are not allowed to have one whole big picture.
Right.
I think we became jealous of all the big pictures that are in the national galleries of the world. We wanted to be like that.
Right.
Yes, that's how they came together in that way. And we like the fact that they're in frames in a way, because it controls the composition. You can't put anything anywhere in the picture.
Yeah.
You don't want the line going down the middle or something.
Right.
So it's a kind of discipline that we like. It also makes the picture instantly recognizable.
Yeah.
And also we think it's very true to life that our weeks are divided into days, our days into hours, our lives into years. We don't have a house with one brick, it's all divided. So it's very, very true to life as a system, really.
And the subjects, they are very important.
Yeah.
What is in front of us? No? How do we feel about everything in the world? No? What is going on? No?
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to express. And that is amazing, because it is It's our world. It's the Gilbert and George world. You move into it. That's why we always like to do very big shows where you can walk into our world, and that's very exciting. Yeah. And you can experience our feelings and our thoughts. Yeah. It's not only thoughts and feelings.
And trying in a complicated and simple way, because we realize as baby artists that the most important things, the good things in life, we feel are very complicated and very simple at the same time. Great novels are like that, great pieces of music are like that. And so we want to make a form that we can speak to the viewer. Our earliest slogan was art for all. We don't want to make an art that alienates 90% of the world's population. The simple rectangle with the images, even if it's reproduced on a postcard or a matchbox, that it still can be read, that people can get some ideas of human experience and feelings that can't be translated just into sentences. Something different and unique that speaks to people of their life and of their hopes. That's why it all comes down to the basic structure of art, which is death,
hope,
life,
fear,
sex,
money,
race,
religious,
shitty,
naked,
human,
world.
That lies inside anyone, wherever they live in the world, whatever their religion or background or educational background, they still are those forces.
But it was very exciting because in 1960, let's say 69, we wrote to put on the responsibility suit of our art. And that's exciting. And we did that. We never changed that. The responsibility to our art. We are responsible for our thoughts, our feelings, what we say. We are totally in charge of it.
We always say if you damage your leg or burn yourself in the kitchen, you know how to get a doctor or go to the hospital. If you get robbed or mugged, you know where to get to the police station. But within the human person, there is still a huge area, a space of emotion and thought and responsibility and honor and fear, and that's the area in which we operate. That's the human experience, how we can progress. Everyone wants a better world, and we want to be a small part of that.
Was also the scale of the rectangles, was that also to do with the space that you had in Fournier Street at the beginning? Like presumably you couldn't have in a huge machine that could print huge scale, right?
Or we could make as big as pictures we want, because they're in panels.
Right.
The earlier exhibitions, we didn't see the pictures until they were nailed up in the gallery.
Right, because you made them as the parts.
We went with a bundle of panels under our arm,
right.
Telephoned the gallery in advance and told them what pieces of cardboard and glass to arrange. And we had rolls of what used to be called passepartout, tape that you had to lick, and we framed the pictures there. Very primitive and very simple.
No, it was based on what kind of paper we were allowed to buy, what they call like Ilford, or what, 50 by 60, I remember that is. And only later we were able to change we bought an enormous enlarger that we were able to project on the wall.
Right.
And now, for the last 20 years, computers.
Right.
But it is the same. It's very funny because a lot of people think that we are doing something different. But when you look through our books, you don't see the change because we did exactly that before. Layers. Layers.
Years before we started making the pictures with computers, young people used to come to our exhibitions and say, "What computer are you using?" And we weren't, because it is the same language.
But they were not ready. The computers were not ready because I remember that we had to because the cameras were not digitally good enough. So we had to take photographs and then scan them at what they call 45 million pixels. No? It took half an hour to scan and what was certified negative.
Right.
So we bought two scanners, no? And the scanner, scanning was done by our assistant from China. He's doing that. But now we don't have to do that because the cameras are good enough that that's it. It's extraordinarily fantastic for us that you are able to take a picture and moving in and do whatever you want with it. It's just magic for us. It's modern.
Right.
It's a modern way of making art. It's a modern way of speaking.
Yeah.
There's all this art with big brushes. We don't care.
The magic thing was to move over from the darkroom with all these trays, the developer and the fixative, and you have to work in darkness all day.
Maybe half a year in darkness.
With a red
Or in
bulb.
red, yeah.
We used to go into the studio early in the morning when it was still not light and come out in the afternoon. We used to walk to Liverpool Street to look at the world. We thought buses and people. We didn't realize there was another world there.
And
And
sometimes
people think that maybe we miss the romance of the darkroom with the paper and the chemicals and all that. The only thing we miss is the rubber gloves.
There also seemed to be an important moment where the images broke from the frame. So because to begin with, the images were all within the frame, and then you went, and then upon
in 1980 it moved over to that.
and then the images could go
Yeah,
full, so it could have a
Cross
monumental scale when
Yeah.
they were seen from a distance. Right?
1980
Right.
we moved over.
That took us time to develop, to
Yeah.
figure that out.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So a lot of your work was kind of problem solving as well. To
Oh,
begin
yes,
with, like,
non-stop.
right?
It's we have to have a system.
Yeah,
We are always into a system,
Right.
quite a rigid system, but not a subject.
right,
But it's a rigid system that we have
right.
to speak.
So it's a
We always
combination.
believed that the more organized we were as people, and the more organized the studio was, the more organized our archive and our life and our breakfast, and the more regimented, simple, totally organized that was, the freer we were in our heads. We could feel and think and want and desire more, because all of the other things were not important. That's why from the earliest day we decided not to have a kitchen, because that meant we didn't have to do any shopping, any planning for meals, any preparing meals, any disposing of waste. We were totally free, very independent of that. That's why it was dreadful when the pandemic came and all the restaurants closed. We suddenly started to have food in the house. We didn't have a kitchen. We didn't have anything to cook, so we had cheese and ham and bread, and we hated with crumbs on the studio floor.
And if some friends came with food, they tried to save us. No?
Can you take us to Fournier Street? Can you talk about Fournier Street, where you lived for 50 years now?
Fournier Street. I remember 100 years ago we were in the ground floor at Fournier Street, and suddenly James Mason walked past the window. James Mason at that time was a household name, a famous film star and actor. And I said to Gilbert, "You probably think I'm mad, but I think James Mason had just walked past the window." And he did. He was making a film called The London That Nobody Knows.
And he said,
And we saw the film years later. We didn't have a television then, so we didn't see we had a television very late in life. And we saw a video of that film. And at one point in the film, he says with this wonderfully north country accent, "Fournier Street," very grand name. Now, we only live in Fournier Street because when we came to London first, it was the cheapest place to live, and we had very little money. It was £12 a month for any floor of any building. It could be the basement or the attic. It went up to £16 a month, and there was nowhere in London where you could live and work. If you had a bed sit, the landlady wouldn't like you making art, and if you had a studio, the landlord wouldn't like you sleeping there. So it was very cheap to live in Spitalfields. And it was very romantic and very extraordinary. We're both country people, so to live in the city as students, the world's greatest city, and to be surrounded by thousands of tramps at that time. There were people damaged by the First World War, the Second World War, and many people damaged by the sex laws pre-1967 decriminalization. So in some funny way, as Gilbert was saying about tramps, we had some idea of tramps in a way. We felt not entirely separate from tramps in that way.
It was quite
exotic.
because,
And of course, all of those tramps have gone now. They've all died. None of them were Londoners. If you want to become a tramp, you have to move away from your home city. You generally gravitate to capitals. I remember when we first went to New York, we went to downtown to the Bowery, which is the nearest thing to the East End, nearest thing to Spitalfields. And we found a bar there, which was for all the down and outs and the damaged people. They were all Brits, because you have to move somewhere else. And nowadays, of course, all of those people are gone, and now we have this community of drug addicts, all of which, like the damaged tramps, they have some feeling of connection with us as well. They do. We feel that it's a terrible thing, of course. It's a nightmare. It would be lovely to be. I always thought it would be lovely to be a happy drug addict, but there's no such thing. And we do feel for the young people. And of course, they don't go to galleries or exhibitions or something, but they have a feeling for us. Somehow or other, our art has managed to get through to those people in some strange way. A few months ago, we were walking down Whitechapel High Street, and one of the young drug addicts was coming along the pavement towards us, and he was limping, and his trousers were torn, and there was something frightful coming out of his ear on the left side, and he was quite dirty and run down. And as he came level with us, he recognized us, and commenting on his art, he said, "I like the ship paintings best." and we laughed, and then we went home and cried.
I mean, it was quite exciting because George took me to East End of London in 1967, 68, and we used to walk the whole night in these amazing streets. For me, it was like moving into a film, and all these yellow lights, they're never, what you're on the continent, you don't have these yellow streets and all this stuff. And it was just magic, you know. And then when we left the School of Art, and we were stuck, because we have to be artists, no? So we had to invent something to be artists. So we thought we could be the art, no? And that's our biggest invention we ever did, to make ourselves the subject and the object, you know? And then we were able to, I remember that nobody wanted us actually, but we were able to invent ourselves through little cards and through little booklets and pose in some galleries. And it was extraordinary. It was amazing success overnight. Overnight. We went all over Germany, all over Holland, all over Italy, I saw them in sculptures, and New York, all stuff, and it was magic.
We had two enormous pieces of luck. One was when there was an international touring modern art exhibition called When Attitudes Become Form. It had a subtitle, Living in the Head. And we heard that it was coming to London, and we heard that whenever it landed in a city, a local person would be asked to add artists to the show. And we heard that the person who would do that in London would be Charles Harrison, who knew our early adventures into art, and we knew that therefore we would be included. And then to our total amazement, he didn't choose us. And we were cast into an amazing doom and unhappiness, and we thought, this one opportunity that will never occur again, this big international show, and we're not in it. And there's nothing you can do about it. Yes, there is. What could we do? We could gate crash the opening as living sculptures. It was at the ICA in the Mall, and we went with our multicolored metallized heads and hands, and we just stood as a living sculpture in the middle of the private view, which strangely was sponsored by Philip Morris, the cigarette company. and there were girls with fishnet stockings passing cigarettes around to everyone. And we just stood there, and we did steal the show. And at the end of the evening, a young man came up to us and said, "My name is Conrad Fischer. You do a show with me in Düsseldorf, huh?" And that was the most famous modern art dealer in the world at that moment. So that was an enormous piece of luck. And then we were doing the singing sculpture in different towns, and we did the singing. We were invited to do a singing sculpture in what we now call a pop-up gallery in Brussels. It was a ladies' clothes shop that was closed, and they had a few weeks spare, and so they had it as a gallery. And we did the singing sculpture one rainy night in the winter in Brussels, and it was a very inauspicious evening, nothing wonderfully successful about it. But at the end of the evening, what we thought was a little old lady, she was much younger than we are now, came up to us and said, with this extraordinary Central European accent, "My name is Ilyana Sonnabend, and I'm opening a gallery in New York, and I want you to do the first exhibition." And that was an invitation that every artist would die for at that time. So she took us to North America, and Conrad Fischer took us all over Europe.
And the magic of Fournier Street is still the same in that it's a rare part of East London that wasn't bombed, and it's on the kind of edge of a few streets that are, if you look a certain way, you don't see any towers, and you don't see anything you could be in the time it was built. And there's also the weird alchemy as well of the fact that the City of London is just here, that for years has had its back turned to the East End. And there's this weird sudden kind of tide between the two, right? Where
it's exciting. The Square Mile is on our doorstep, the financial centre, and there's Cockney land going that way, and Bangladesh people there. It's extraordinary, extraordinary.
Even if they tried to demolish it in 1970, or the old protocol, that's why we actually were able to buy it in 73. And they all tried to demolish, and then Dan Cruikshank, he was a big champion of what it calls the poet. So it was extraordinary, and we were the first one to did a house up.
Right.
They were all what it calls small factories, clothing factories, and they were all Jewish factories in some way. Buttons, whatever, suits or hats or whatever, farriers and all stuff. And we were the first one who restored one back to normality, to a house. They didn't think they were normal house, they were just ready for demolishing, no? But they were, so we started to restore it all ourselves, day and night, and at the same time making artworks. It was amazing. It was all amazing.
When we came back from the West End in the evenings in a taxi, as the taxi would pull up, the taxi driver would look at it and say, "When's this lot coming down then?" not will it, just when. And generally speaking, if you hired a taxi in the West End at that time, you stopped a taxi in Charing Cross Road and said, "Fournier Street," they would say something like, "What do you want to go there for, Gov?" They were deeply suspicious. They were right.
No, it was exciting. Even we were the first one to go to an Indian restaurant in Brick Lane.
We used to go to the lovely Indian restaurant, which was called
Clifton.
The Clifton. And they were always, it was all full of men because they hadn't brought their families over. They were single Bangladesh men. And they were all living in bedsitters, so they needed to eat out, like we do now. And it was just us, the Bangladeshis, and the police who came in every evening and had a free takeaway. And I was so horrified coming from darkest Devon and being brought up an honest, decent Christian twit. I thought, should I telephone Scotland Yard with this corruption in our police force?
And it's very funny because there was another small restaurant there, and you went in there, and halfway through, the door was open, and the tramps would come in and grab the food from the plate and go out again. But it was very inspiring. No?
It's fascinating talking with you at the age I am now, and having grown up with you as artists when I was younger, looking at your work and thinking about your decisions and your statements and how to be. And I remember the kind of fear almost in myself of, wait, they do the same thing every day, they wear the same thing, almost as if that was terrifying. And actually, it's amazing to talk with you now and to see that freedom that it's given you. And actually,
we had a secret, and the secret was we realized that all of our contemporaries, students and teachers, didn't think anything about people. They thought only about the superiority of art. They thought that out there in the Charing Cross Road, there are lots of idiots who wouldn't understand it anyway. And we realized that was entirely wrong. And that's when we invented the slogan, art for all.
And it was exciting that we were the subject of our art, and that is still there. You know, everything that we think of can be our art. Yeah. Our art. And it is quite, yes.
We're very driven people. We have a great sense of purpose.
Even it was the simplicity, no? That you have our suits on. We go to the market cafe for, I think, 30 years, 7 o'clock and 12 o'clock. In the evening, we used to go to an Indian restaurant. Then we stop with, now we are going to stop, to...
Same restaurant,
Mangal One, that is just fantastic. So we are becoming very big. You have to become a friend of the waiters. George always wants to kiss waiters. That is...
Sadly, because of the pandemic, we haven't kissed a waiter since Christmas.
But that's being friendly to waiters is a revolution.
Right.
And the other secret is not to read the menu. We never read menus. You have the same thing every night until you nearly vomit, then you change the menu. We're always amazed to see young people at the next table looking at the menu for 45 minutes and then having a quick meal and leaving. I think that menus are very boring, like telephone directories. I like novels and I like reading history, but menus, like wine lists. Wine lists are boring. Whenever we go to a grand restaurant where the wine waiter comes towards the table with the big leather volume, just before he reaches the table we say, "Please bring us a bottle of your least expensive red wine." It always works. It always works.
But because it's fascinating me, because like the life I live with my husband, we basically spend all our life together. We have a cup of coffee at the same time every day. We pretty much do the same thing. We walk the dog, and how normal it seems to us, and yet when you first made the declarations, it seemed like it was an ordeal you were going to put yourself through. Like, was it, when you made the statements, had it got the joy then that you had? Well, about being the rules for sculptors and the.
But we had to, and we wanted to win.
Right.
And that's very simple.
Yeah.
Every day we are driven because we didn't succeed.
Yeah.
So every day, one day we will succeed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's always in front of us.
Yeah.
Day now, that's what closes us totally together, and nobody can touch us.
Yeah.
This iron suit.
Because most of the people who left St. Martin's at the same time with us, it was easy because you would get a part-time teaching job. Many of them had part-time teaching jobs almost before they left college. That wouldn't be available to two people, yeah? Or they would get a subsidized studio from, it was an organization especially for that. Again, two people couldn't do that. Yeah? The idea of two people exhibiting together was a new idea, nobody had thought of that. So in a way, being excluded was very good for us.
Right.
We always say I think Oscar Wilde also said he got a lot of help from his enemies. I think we did as well.
Right. But also it seems to be the kind of pleasure you have in each other's company.
We want to succeed.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. And even because we invented this language for us, we invented a different kind of art for ourselves to speak, you know?
Yeah.
And the artists, after all, if they cannot speak, they are nothing.
Yeah.
The artists have to be able to have a language to speak, you know? And we invented that for ourselves. Okay, they didn't listen for many times, but we did it. And we became we liked very much when we were able to do these amazing shows, museum shows, public spaces. We did more than 100 exhibitions. This amazing confrontation, the public confronting us, these rooms full of mad ideas, confronting them, or skinheads, or drunks, or whatever you want, or us drunk, or all the subjects you can think of are there in some way. And that's why we were able to do big shows. They have a meeting public, because they're speaking. The artwork speak, and it's modern language. It's not an old-fashioned painting that we are quite against.
And we always know that it's working because we have a fantastic fan mail, mainly from very, very young people and a lot of elderly people. And we realize that children and teenagers are very free in their thinking, and then later in life maybe less so, and in later life people become very free again. Yeah? But that we know that it works because of the response we get is very, very important to us. Only 3 nights ago we took the bus, as we usually do, up to the Mangal one, and the bus stops at the Princess May School, and we got off the bus and walked down towards the Mangal restaurant, and then we heard footsteps running behind us, and we turned, and the bus driver had got off his bus, locked the bus, left the people inside, looking very strange, and he caught up with us and say, "I just want to say you do fantastic art. I really think it's amazing good. Carry on with the good work. You're a fantastic artist."
And we love that.
We know it works.
We love that stuff.
The people on the bus looked terribly worried. being locked in a London bus.
So I think we want to make sure there's time for Gilbert George to sign things. So if anyone's got any questions, would they like to put their hand up? There's a question at the back.
I've got a wonderful book of yours called Dark Shadow, which is a whole series of what I consider really wonderful prose poems with photos next to them. Do you see that writing, which I see as very poetry, as a sort of poetic sculpture?
Yes, we did the book Dark Shadow, and it was very simple because we were in Fournier Street, just the ground floor. We just had the 2 rooms, and in the evenings in the winter we had to leave to find somewhere heated, and we used to go to the Wimpy Bar at Liverpool Street. So we went with the plates for the book, and we sat down at dinner, and then we wrote the text that would appear on the other side.
In fact, we did
it was
two.
A marvelous experience.
We did 2. We did the side by side.
First,
the first one, and that was 600 copy, and Walter Koenig published that. It was extraordinary.
We were totally unknown, and there was a knock at the door of Fournier Street, and a young man said he would like to publish a book of us. And we were amazed. Why would he? We weren't known or anything, and that was side by side.
Yes, but now we are doing, instead of that, we are doing the philosophy.
We still didn't publish the philosophy, and we still didn't publish the Godology, and there's a 3rd one we don't know what it's called yet. So there's many publications coming up.
Yes, words are quite important to our art. Images and words.
We think to have a title in the picture is totally democratic and normal. You can't imagine a chocolate bar that doesn't have a name, or a novel that doesn't have a title on the front. Yeah? It's normal to have a title. Every street has a name, every person has a name. Why would you have a series of pictures called Untitled Number 1, Untitled Number 2? That seems deliberately obscure.
No, the titles are very important in artwork for us, because you can imagine what it is, and you can.
And they always are on the work. They're always on the work.
Yes.
The key,
part of the work.
Key to the general area of under discussion. So were there any other questions?
Yes.
Oh yes.
Or there's one there as well.
I've got the microphone, so I'll speak first and pass it on to you. Thank you very much for such a wonderful conversation. And you haven't talked about the projects you've got for the future, which I think would be really fascinating to know, because I think at any one time you probably have about 5 or 6 shows touring the world. So it would be good to know where the shows are that are on exhibition now, and what plans you've got for the future.
Cannot get it.
So what are your next plans?
The next plan is our own, what you call the the Gilbert George Art Center,
Right.
that we do that. That is very 2 minutes from our house. And it's going to be finished in December. And next year we're trying to make some shows if we are not bankrupt.
So,
we were very lucky. We found a building very near Fournier Street, in a very beautiful little street, cobbled street, with a wonderful name, Heneage Street. And there's a very beautiful free house, public house there, not belonging to a brewery. And next door to that, there are some double doors. And beyond that, there's a very beautiful cobbled yard with some old, not listed buildings, so we can convert them into 3 very beautiful galleries. And the idea is so that we can live forever, which is what we all want to do. So it'll be finished this year, and we will open in the spring. And the pub next door is called the Pride of Spitalfields. And there's a rumour going around that when our foundation opens, they're going to change the name of the pub from the Pride of Spitalfields to the Shame of the Spitalfields.
And it's very exciting because all our, we did so many pictures, and all the good ones we have, because all the collectors always want the ones that doesn't offend.
Right.
So we are ending up in the best pictures. It's very simple because collectors only buy certain pieces. They don't want to offend that cleaning lady or the wife or I don't know who, or the baby who is in front of it. And so we're ending up with extraordinary pictures.
Great collection of unpleasant pictures.
Stand up, sit
Hello,
down.
Anthony.
I'm not writing for Sunday Times Star magazine, but it's a question about your look. I was just remembering, I first had tea with you 34, 35 years ago in Fournier Street, when you had the one house, not the 3 houses, which was still full of so many vases and it was absolutely wonderful. But George, it's more a question for you than Gilbert, and for all the young people here. What's your regime? I mean, do you use face creams? I mean, how come you're looking as young as when I used to come to tea with you 30 years ago?
Why is that?
You think we're old or something? You think we're old or something?
I mean, is it face creams? Perhaps it's sex, I don't know.
What do you use for the shaving?
How come you're still looking so young after all these years?
Good heavens.
Both of you, I mean.
I don't know.
Have you ever used moisturiser, I think
No.
is the question.
Maybe
Something
down
you put
here,
in
but
your
not
tea.
We used to say gin and spunk. Gin and spunk. In the 19th century, ladies used to rub their breasts with semen. It was a good class of activity to do. It was supposed to keep them pure and white and beautiful. It's very well documented, yes. Kept the husbands busy.
Another question.
Hi there. Thank you for the very illuminating talk. You mentioned at the end there about your drive to succeed, and that every day you wake up looking for success, to find
Sorry, was that the
success.
mask? I can't understand.
You mentioned at the end of the talk about the drive to succeed, about waking up every morning looking to have success. Can you define that, or do you have a definition in your mind about what that success is?
I think I had the experience as a teenager. I bought a second-hand copy of Van Gogh's letters. I think it was published first in English in the 50s, and I read the whole way through the book and put it down and realized one thing. There were lots of beautiful, interesting things in it in some places, but the one thing that I learned from the book was that he did it all wrong and he won. And that impressed me very, very much.
That's what we're trying to emulate.
When we had the touring show recently, we were in Arles, and it was very exciting to exhibit in the city where he spent some years. And we heard some interesting stories there. A local person said that, do you know when Van Gogh was here, he was only there for 2 or 3 years, he was very poor, he was unwell, he was unhappy, But all of the good people of the town, the hotelier, the school teacher, the chief of police, the leading chemist, they all got together to sign a letter to get the man out of town. Extraordinary. And then we heard from another lady in the town. She said, you know, a lot of well-to-do people living in Arles now, they think, well, you know, his reputation is very exaggerated. Not all of his pictures are that good. And in any case, he's not French. And that's today. So the battle for art of all kinds and all types goes on, which is exciting. Any more questions?
Thank you, Gilbert and George. I have a question about your series and the titles of your series of art and of pictures. Does the title of the series come first, or do the pictures come first and then you name them?
No, first the images come.
Images come.
Then the designs come. Then the titles come. Then after a while we gave it an overall title now, the new normal chart, that is where. Images first, design, and then once the designs are done, they are very clear. Nothing changes a lot after that. And then we have to make them one-to-one. And then the titles come, and then after a while we gave it an overall title.
Sometimes the titles are there from the beginning, but we don't know until the end. It's a great mystery. The whole idea of creating pictures is still, to us, a mystery. To go into the studio and knowing that you're going to come out having designed a picture or two pictures is extraordinary. It does feel different from normal life. You feel elevated in some way. It's a little bit, but different from when you were very attracted romantically or sexually towards another person, and all of everything else in life seems more colourful and more beautiful and more interesting. The act of creating is an exhilarating mystery, a total mystery as well.
Every time we do a new group of people, we're taking images, but so many, unbelievable, maybe 10,000. Unnecessary. And then we put them into subjects, outside, inside, us, halfway, what they call birds or not birds, or flowers, or drunks, or whatever, all in sections, And then we have these big books, and we have these enormous tables in the studio with all these books, and then we go down in the studio and choose that day what inspires us that day. That's what we choose. So it's quite a simple system that we have, and we make that picture, and we never change our mind. We never go back and improve it all. We never did that. We don't do that. But it's very interesting because the images are there. In fact, it's like artists already sketching. They used to go sketching, having trees or girls or whatever, and then they would make a composition. So we are exactly like that. Nothing has changed. Only the negative is more up to date. That we just press a button and you have an image. That for us is magic.
Yes? Try it without the mic.
Yeah,
stand up.
It seems it's a difficult question to ask because it's a little bit of a taboo subject. But I was wondering, in the event that you don't die at the same time, would the remaining person continue making art in a singular, as a singular person?
We call that the great German question. Whenever we're in Germany, whenever there's a question, always somebody gets up and says, "What happens if one of you dies?" I say, we're very careful. We always cross. Fear not. We always cross the road together.
thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for your time, your questions, your energy. So Gilbert and George are going to sign books and posters, I think. Out there, I think. Yeah, just back here, yeah. And if anyone wants my book's up there as well. But thank you all so much. Thank you all. Thank you, Gilbert. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.